So the presentation will be in a combination of Polish and English. Unfortunately, my Polish is really terrible, so if I started speaking, you'll be thinking I will sound like your 5-year-old if any of you have one, so that's not going to work. If anybody does not speak Polish, not besides our group. Okay, so no translation needs, Alan, so you're off the hook with the translation. Anyway, did you want to give a word first?
Ja teraz sprawdzę, czy wszyscy mówią po polsku. W takim razie chciałem was wszystkich powitać. Cieszę się, że tak licznie się pojawiliście na zaproszenie Kena i na całą akcję tutaj którą Ken organizuje razem z klubem WITC. Ja jestem Janek Kaseja i jak to mówią, jestem sprawcą całego zamieszania. I chciałem chyba zacząć od takich braw na zachętę dla wszystkich dzisiejszych mówców. Powitajmy cały zespół WITC brawami.
Okay, I don't know what you're clapping for, but I'll take that as a sign that it's time for me to start speaking. Okay, thank you. If that was an introduction, I appreciate it, Jan. Let me actually start by thanking a couple of people. Alan from WITC, who's been very involved with getting this meeting organized. Thank you very much. In advance, thank you for all the WITCers who are here to speak tonight on behalf of their experience at triathlon, and thanks for the representatives from the Shedlce Super Sprint, Pavel and Gosha, and then of course thanks very much for ERGO, who's been a great partner of WITC's, our first partner for 2 years now. Thank you for hosting us today and for opening up your doors to discuss something that's more than running, but running, swimming, and also cycling. So thank you very much.
No problem. We like it.
Okay, so let's move forward and let's introduce triathlon. So my name, by the way, is Ken Globerman. I am relatively new to Poland, though not that new anymore. I've been here for almost 3 years. I'm from New York. Yes, I am a triathlete, though I don't really look like a triathlete, but in fact I do them. I started running to lose weight in 2003, 2002, to get myself in shape when I hit my early 30s and realized that life was too short to remain a couch potato, and I took up running. I ran a couple of New York City marathons, which was probably my greatest experience with endurance sports. And in 2008, I decided, well, I've been running for 5 years. I think I'd like to maybe mix it up a little bit and try something else. And I was introduced to triathlon. I joined a triathlon club in Brooklyn called the Brooklyn Triathlon Club, and started doing races, sprint distance and so forth. I came to Poland, like I said, 3 years ago. And I was looking for an outlet to find people that speak English that I could do sports, running, swimming, and cycling with, and hence we have now what's called the Warsaw International Triathlon Club, or WITC. So that's the brief introduction. So what is triathlon? Well, it's basically swimming, biking, and running. Did anybody not know that, by the way? And how many people here, how many of you have never done a triathlon? Raise your hands. Good. Nice. So you are the right audience. So this is it. We can all go home now. This is what triathlon is. Okay. So there's nothing else to talk about. Thank you very much. No, in reality, you know, very simply stated, it's a multi-sport endeavor. The traditional triathlon involves these 3 sports, one after the next, of course, with a very crazy transition period that happens in between them. And you know, the thing I want to point out first is that a lot of people, when I talk about, yeah, I do triathlons, they immediately say to me, oh, you do those Ironman triathlons? And I said, well, not exactly. Okay, there are other triathlons, and I want to make the first point that there are actually several common distances of triathlon. So if I was to give you the sort of 101 vernacular on triathlon, this is it. You start with, if you want to start with the longest, of course, there is the Ironman branded triathlon. Ironman is a brand, actually, which is why you often hear about Ironman distance, but you don't hear about Ironman triathlons in Poland, for example. There's no Ironman sanctioned races here yet. There's also something called a half Ironman, or a long distance triathlon, often in the States referred to as the 70.3 because it accumulates 70.3 miles, in fact. There's the intermediate distance. You see a lot of Olympic distance races and quarter Ironmans in Poland. They're getting quite popular. Then you have a sprint distance race, which is a really great way to get into triathlon for the first time because the distances are not too crazy. And it's something that you can achieve with minimal training. And then there's even something called the super sprint distance, which is an even shorter version of a triathlon, a shorter sprint triathlon, which is really great for pretty much, I think, anybody. So here's triathlons from sort of A to Z. Let me just talk a couple of statistics. Triathlons, the modern day triathlon started in California in 1974. Its popularity in the United States rose dramatically once it became included in the Olympics in 2000. And the number of triathlon events in just 8 years between 2004 and 2012 has grown 300%. There are 4,300 plus triathlon events in the United States alone. How many people do you think, I'm giving you US statistics because triathlon, clearly the US is where triathlon has definitely hit its stride first globally in terms of volume. How many people do you think in the United States participated in triathlon in the last year? What do you think the number is? Anybody want to guess?
5% of population?
How much?
5%?
So 5% of the population, so that would be
1.5 million?
No.
How about 20,000?
10 what?
20,000?
20,000? No. It's actually, in 2011, an estimated 1.9 or almost 2 million people participated in some triathlon of sprint length or greater. So, and that's a 59% increase only in 3 years. So triathlon really has hit its stride in the US in the last 10 years. And in Poland, as many of you know, it's growing on a percentage basis even more rapidly than that. Last year, there were probably a handful of triathlons in Poland. This is the list of races that I know about or that we know about this year. And there's probably others that aren't even included here. And frankly speaking, I wouldn't be surprised if next year you see double the number of races that you see this year. So this is definitely a sport on the rise, on the move in Poland, and you just see it in every way, shape, and form. Demystifying triathlon. I just want to make a couple of points for all of you guys who are new to this, okay? Number one, most triathletes start with one strong element, like running is typical, and one weak element. Almost everybody I've met that got into triathlon as an adult could not do well one of the three disciplines. They either couldn't swim, or they have no training, riding, bike, long distance, or they have little running training, but there's usually one element that is very weak. It's common amongst almost everybody. Second, let's be honest, we're not 20, well, most of us are not 20 years old in the room, right? The fact of the matter is, triathlon is most participated by people who are actually after their athletic peak from a chronological perspective. The average triathlete in the United States is 38 years old. So this is actually a sport. And if Poland, let's say, gravitates in the direction of the US as it develops, you're going to start seeing people who are middle-aged, more people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, even 60s, if not 70s, participating in triathlon. It's because of the element that it's great cross-training. You can do shorter distance races. You're not taxing the joint as much as long running races, for example. So there's a lot of reasons why it's a great sport for older adults to get into. Triathlon is not only for men, okay? I was in a race in Elk and there were like 5 women. I was looking around in my group and I was counting the women on one hand. Literally, out of about 100 people that were going in the water with me, I think there were 5 women. And this, I hope, changes. You see it changing in Poland already with running. Running is much more 50-50 than it used to be. I'm hoping triathlon goes in that direction. In the US, 40% of tri participants are women. Triathletes are not superhuman athletes. I am not a superhuman athlete, okay? And thank you, Mark. Thank you very much. I used to be, though. You do not need to train every day to do a triathlon. I meet a lot of people who think it's either an on switch or an off switch. Unless you're training for Ironman in my opinion, unless you're training for Ironman or possibly half Ironman, you don't need to excessively train in order to succeed at doing a shorter distance triathlon. And then finally, anyone can do it. I just want to leave you with that point. So this is me demystifying triathlon. So I mentioned Warsaw International Triathlon Club. I'm just going to show about a 60-second slideshow rather than describe the club in detail. I thought it'd be best to show you visually a little bit about WITC. So we are about 2.5 years old now. We are a group of close to 400 people in our broad community. We have about 100 people who are actively participating in running or triathlon competitions. The club represents about 20 countries and growing of people who live here in Poland, whether they be working for an embassy, an expat like myself here doing business, someone studying, or whatever the case may be. And running and swimming and training side by side with Polish people. I would say that 30 to 50% of our community is Polish, and the balance are from these 20 or so different countries. So, and we are English speaking, so it's a great way for people in the Polish community to get involved with a group of people speaking in English. And there are some people who are into that. There's a lot of Polish people living in Warsaw who've lived abroad for a while and miss the opportunity to converse in English, so we attract those Polish people, and it's an awesome group. And the last thing I'll say is that what's unique about our group is that we find this very unique balance of training and social activity, which you don't see in a lot of groups. A lot of groups tend to be very, very regimented on training. You have a couple of groups that do very, very casual stuff and don't really get too serious. We have a nice middle ground of people who are really training for races, but at the same time, we do it on our time. We're working professionals. We can't train together 5 days a week, so we just find ways to get together when we can. So that's an overview, and that's the amount of people who showed up at last Tuesday's run. We run every Tuesday at Warszawa Powiśle, and we had about 35 runners. Our group is growing, and it's really exciting. So we'd love to have more of you come down and join us and get into running, and then subsequently get into triathlon. Our training is 4 days a week. We have running on Tuesdays and Saturdays, running and cycling, and Wednesday and Thursday we have, depending on what season we're in, swimming, cross training, as well as indoor cycling in the wintertime. So that's just giving you a sense. So that's it from me. I don't know how long I spoke for. How long did I speak for? Okay. So what we're going to do now is, the way this is going to work is, we thought the best thing was for you to hear from some of our people, their experience as first-time triathletes, their experience getting into triathlon. And everyone here who's going to be speaking has probably only been doing triathlon for 1 to 2 years, with maybe one exception. So you're going to be hearing from relatively new triathletes, and you'll have an opportunity to Q&A with them and ask questions about how their perspective. So after that, we're going to have our friends from Wprowadzenie Triathlon, which is in August, give a brief presentation on this great race that we hope that some of you consider signing up for, or at least signing up for today. And we'll have a general Q&A at the end. So that's the format.